All right, now we have our three files in Bridge here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up all three of these at the same time. So I'm going to hold down my Command key and I'm going to select all three. And I'm going to right click and I'm going to say Open in Camera Raw. Now you have three different exposures. So normally when we were doing a single JPEG, we were sliding the slider, the exposure slider, all over the place to try to get the best exposure for different areas. What we're going to do here is we're going to seam together three separate images to make that HDR picture, that high dynamic range image. So really you don't need to do too much to this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select all these at the same time. So I'm going to hit select all, and that selects 1, 2, and 3. So now if I make a change to 1, it's going to make a change to all three. Really the only thing I'm going to tinker with here is going to be the white balance. So I'm going to say daylight. You see that made a big difference here. Makes it much more natural. Before it had sort of a blue cast on it. That white balance is super important. So either presetting that in your camera ahead of time, or when you go back to your post-production, being able to edit that is super important. All right, you can see a shot has a very bluish cast to it here. Daylight, because we're just relying on the daylight. If you were inside with no clouds, obviously you would use fluorescent or a tungsten bulb, which is a traditional light bulb. All right, so if I go and look at these, I can see they're all much better. For the most part, they're really pretty good. I'm just going to adjust a little bit of color on my darkest exposure because I want just a little bit more blue in here when I put them together. So let's go, and again, not a lot, a little bit goes a long way, but I'm going to say, I'm going to turn up my blues here on this a little bit. I'm going to go to my luminance. All right, I'm trying to make that sky, you can see it's just a little bit bluer. Looks pretty good. Okay, over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at like this. This carpet looks really nice, but then the carpet in the bright lights is way too bright. But maybe I'll use this carpet in here. Like this carpet's way too dark, but then this carpet in here is about the right exposure, but the stools are not. Here I have, maybe this carpet is better. We'll have to test it and see, but then here I have some light on these stools and some things that's sort of happening. So what we're going to do is we're going to start to sort of Frankenstein these pieces together. I think it looks pretty good. If I go maybe just a touch, you know, this is like your whole, you know, you're up a step, down a step sort of thing. So I really, you know, maybe I'm going to leave well enough alone and just leave it at 0. All right, so I'm going to say done. So here's my preview. All these things are ready to go. Now, if you go to up here where it says Tools, I make sure it says Adobe Bridge still. If I go to Tools, I'm going to go to Photoshop, and here it says that I can merge to an HDR image. Now, if I do that, it's just going to do sort of like a sloppy job. There's not a lot of changing that I can do overall because it's just going to put them all into one layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load these files into Photoshop layers. And what this is going to do is it's going to make a document that has each one of these pictures in that layer. And then what I'm going to do from there is using layer masks, I'm going to mask out different layers. So here's my top one, my middle one, and my low one, right? I'm going to mask out certain things so that I can create an image. All right, so in here, I'm going to use this one as my top image because I really like the exposure of this outside edge, but I'm going to change the rug and I'm going to change the window a little bit. All right, so I'm going to take this one and put it on the top. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this dark one here. Oops. I'm going to take this one, I'm going to put it in the middle. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mask out this window. And I'm going to do this really quick, but then I'm going to show you how to do it. You know, personally, you're going to take more time to do this, but right now I just want to show you sort of quick. So I'm going to take my first layer. I'm going to add a layer mask to it. I'm going to use something like my polygon lasso right here, which is really great. And I'm going to click here, 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 here. All right, I'm getting some natural glow. I'm going to use the second one over here because I'm going to add to my selection. And I'm going to do this for all my windows. All right, and again, for the sake of time, I'm not going to sit here and make you, watch me do all these windows. So I'm just going to go a lot faster. I'm going to be sort of messy here, and I'm going to just collect all this here. So I'm going to take this, like so, and I'm just going to do this whole bottom here. And again, maybe I'm just going to go to here because I think I might want that wall to be that exposure. We'll see. Okay. Again, I'm being just sort of sloppy with this. Like so, like so, like so. Like that. All right, so I've got that with my layer mask. I'm going to use my paintbrush now, and I'm just going to paint in these windows. Wow, like magic, right? Here, let me make the brush a little bigger. We'll go a little faster. And you can see here, like this is the wall without. So what I might do is I'm going to go back with white. And I'm going to paint that out, or I'm going to go back with my selection, and I'm going to fix that so that it's not. Doesn't look as awful. So, like so. All right, so already you can see that looks much better, right? So without that, that's the part right here, and I've just masked that out. I can disable my layer mask here just so you can see it. So that's what it looked like before. That's what it looked like after. So already much more range of dynamic range you can see. So here the carpet would be the same thing. And again, I'm going to do this very quickly. I want the rug maybe from this second one down here. So I'm going to stay my layer mask. I'm going to, maybe I'll carve out this whole area here where my light is. And again, you're going to do this much more carefully than I am. You're going to do each window maybe individually, or you're going to have to go back and do a little fixing. But I'm just doing this, again, fast so you get the idea of what's happening here. All right, so there's my selection. I'm going to take my paintbrush, and I'm going to, oops, there you are, use black. I'm going to paint over this. All right, and what this is showing me is it's showing me this layer, but I don't want that layer because I want the lighter rug underneath, so I'm going to click down here. I'm going to put another layer mask on, and I'm going to click here. Oops, hang on, sorry. Let me step backwards here. I forgot to select the inverse. I always do that. All right, I'm going to go here. I'm going to select the inverse. I'm going to put a layer mask on here. I forget when you have a selection, it's automatically going to reverse it for you. So here what I'm going to do, excuse me, is that punches through and it creates that pull through of that second layer. So here you can see the rug from that second layer. All right, so that's this layer. That's a layer that's below it. As long as these two are showing that, it should allow that rug to sort of come through. And you can see here there's a bunch of these bad lines on here. I'll have to come through either with my mask adjustment or, you know, sort of fix this up. I got black on here, yeah. See, and I can see this is that darker rug underneath. So any adjustments you're going to make here, you're going to have to go to that other mask layer down here. So it's just best to sort of go and take care of it all in one swoop and then just copy that mask down here to the bottom. But you can start to see. Let me step backward because that just looks terrible. Haste makes waste, they say. All right, so now I have my image here I'm starting to work with, right? Once I get everything in the direction that I want it to be in, what I can do is I can take one of these exposures without the mask. So I'm going to take this first one here, and I'm going to say Edit, Copy. I want to let me copy that. Oh, because I don't have anything selected, sorry. Cancel. All right, I'm going to select all. I'm going to go to Edit, and I'm going to say Copy. I'm going to say Edit, Paste. All right, what that did was it just made a copy of this on the top, right? I am going to go to my filter, and I'm going to look at, see if I can find it here. Is it Sketch? It is Sketch, Photocopy. All right, what Photocopy does is it finds the outlines and the edges, sort of like he had in that. You know, if you remember, we were saying that some of the images look sort of dirty and sort of dark. All right, you can adjust this level, the amount of detail you're going to get, depending on how severe you want that to be. All right, like so, and I'm going to say OK. So it just turned it into here. I'm going to say Overlay, and look at that. So now it makes this sort of like, you know, if you recall, he had that sort of outliney feel on everything. You can turn this down a little bit, so it's not quite as severe. But it also helps to sort of bring out all of the range of everything that you've got in your picture. You know, and this sort of stuff, like this line is not dark here, but it would be dark if we had that proper shadow line happening there. And then again, just going in and cleaning up as many things as you can. These reflections on the window here, depending on what exposure you have, you might be able to go in and adjust this exposure to have the picture come in without those images. The other thing you might do is go and take another range of images that might fill in that part in there too. All right, so that's what you've got. You know, and the neat thing about this too is that you can make, let's see if we can paste another one on top here. You know, you can make copy upon copy of this. You can mess with all sorts of different layers on top of this. And again, working with the opacity, working with the brightness. Yeah, that sort of blows out that window, so that sort of goes against our, you know, what we want to do there. But you can mess around with all sorts of different lighting scenarios. This is multiply, so it just sort of adds this sort of dark vignette. And again, it's at 100%, but maybe you could turn that down a little bit, and it adds sort of like that warmth in that picture. All right, so again, this is that crispness that's on top of it from that photocopy layer. Okay, and you know, and it is sort of battling against that blue in the window, but that is your HDR image. So you can see I have detail in pretty much every shadow and every highlighted area. The last thing you might want to do is that even in your darkest areas, you know, if you still want to adjust your contrast a little bit, like in that top layer, you can add an image mask on top of this, and you could make some minor adjustments to your exposures here. Then what you're going to do when you're all done and you have everything set exactly the way you want it, right? I'm going to take this image and I'm going to go to Flatten Image. I'm going to go to Save As, and I'm going to save it as a JPEG. All right, what that's going to do is, let's go to our image size. Oh, I'm sorry, not image size, image mode. All right, when I flattened it, it automatically squished it down to 8-bit channel, so that will allow us to create a JPEG of this. All right, that's what you got. So then save it as a JPEG. Make sure that maybe you save a copy before you flatten it. You might save a larger copy of this as a Photoshop document, so that it, you know, you can go back and tinker with it as you go. But otherwise, layer, flatten image, file, save as, final, HDR, save. And that's what you got. All right, good luck.